The blowout jobs report that has people talking from Wall Street to Main Street. In today's cover story, did you shop on Black Friday? Why you may need to worry about hackers, plus air scare. Why the FAA is hitting the 911 button on hiring. And Apple stock is hot. The other stocks that are on fire. First Business starts now.
You're watching First Business. Financial news, analysis, and today's investment idea.
Good morning, I'm Angela Miles. It's Monday, December 8th. In our first look, the Dow flirts with 18,000. The blue chips blasted to a record high Friday, along with the S&P 500, which closed in uncharted territory. The market moves followed a shocker of a jobs report showing 321,000 people were added to payrolls last month. The unemployment rate remains unchanged at 5.8%. As stocks pushed higher, gold and oil both edged lower. It's Green Monday. eBay coined that phrase. The e-tailer claims the second Monday in December is the third biggest online shopping holiday of the year. Trader Mark Sebastian of OptionPit.com is working the market for us today. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Angela.
After that blowout number with jobs on Friday, what do you think is in the cards for the stock market today?
Yeah, well, I was less than surprised by the muted reaction. Wage growth and that big jobs number, while great for Main Street, that could have an effect on interest rates. And that's part of the reason why the S&P didn't rally on Friday and why I think it's going to be a slow, creeping, grinding market higher. I think the market is going to meander higher into the end of the year, but I'm not expecting a lot of excitement based on that jobs number.
Well, let's talk about some of the stocks that you would buy or sell. What would you buy?
Well, I think interest rates will remain low for 2015, and with some changes in Fannie and Freddie, I really like some of the housing sector. I like Toll Brothers. USG, who makes products to build houses, is particularly cheap in my opinion. Another sector I like is oil. Some of the diversified oil companies, ExxonMobil, Royal Dutch Shell, Chevron Texaco, BP, they all have really nice dividend yields right now and look like they're getting to the point of being somewhat attractive prices. So those are the two areas I really like.
Quickly, what would you sell?
I think some of the techs run its course. I think it might be time to take some profits in names like Apple and maybe GoPro.
Thank you for that update on the market, Mark.
Thank you.
Chuck Coppola steps in now with a report on sky-high job growth. Good morning, Chuck.
Angie, a shakeup is happening in the aviation industry, and it could mean big headaches for flyers. Thousands of air traffic controllers will soon be forced out of their jobs. The mandatory age of retirement for that position is 56. Joe Schwieterman, a DePaul University professor, says that means that the most skilled workers in air traffic control towers are on their way out.
The real concern here that with the bulge in retirements, we're going to have some kinks. I don't think safety will be compromised, but we've seen when changes take place in the control system, even the tiniest change can lead to either backups or cancellations of flights when there's, when things don't work perfectly.
CNBC reports that the agency is planning to hire 10,000 new air traffic controllers over the next decade. It plans to hire more than 1,700 in 2015 alone. Schwieterman believes that the hiring boost could help the FAA diversify its workforce. According to the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, the FAA is more than 75% male and more than 78% white.
On Capitol Hill, House Speaker John Boehner appears eager to pass a spending bill that averts a government shutdown ahead of the deadline Thursday. The bill provides full funding for all government agencies except the Department of Homeland Security. That department controls agencies that support immigration. The bill allows funding for immigration programs just until February. President Obama issued an executive order calling for undocumented immigrants to remain and work in the U.S. The president delivers a key speech on immigration tomorrow in Tennessee.
In our cover story, the opening days of the holiday shopping season suffered another retail hack attack. This time, women's apparel chain BB reports hackers stole credit card information from customers who shopped there in November. BB will not say how many customers may have been affected by the security breach, but the information includes shoppers' names, credit card numbers, and verification codes from any of its more than 200 stores gathered between November 8th through November 26th. Unlike the hack attack last year at Target stores, the information was not taken from the card reader at checkout, but deeper inside the company.
all of the numbers are stored in a database. And this database was on the internal network, and that somebody was able to get into.
Beebe has hired a forensics investigative firm, and in a statement, Beebe's CEO said, "We moved quickly to block this attack and have taken steps to further enhance our security measures." U.S. retailers are about to transition away from magnetic stripe credit cards that are more secure, but that doesn't necessarily solve what happened at Beebe.
The part that's being secured is the card, not the back-end data. So when I do the transaction, it gets stored back at the store at Beebe, and that's the system that was hacked.
Beebe is the latest nationwide chain to be hacked. Target and Home Depot are two others hacked before, and it's changing some shoppers' habits.
I don't use my credit cards any longer.
Really, you've changed?
I have. I take out cash and I shop cash only.
The first thing that the consumer is doing is looking at the stores that have had breaches and saying, I'm not going there anymore. So these organizations are losing business. Secondly, they're not using their credit cards.
Beebe has advised customers who use their credit cards to review their account statements carefully for unauthorized charges. The retailer is also offering free credit monitoring services for a year to customers who may be affected. Beebe stock closed up at $2.78.
Prada's profit dropped a dramatic 44%, partly due to the pro-democracy demonstrations in China. Prada shut the doors of stores in Hong Kong during the protests. Asia makes up about a third of the luxury retailer's business. Sales in Europe also trended lower. Other luxury brands are dealing with similar slowdowns as consumer tastes change and competition becomes more fierce.
It's closing time for a deal between Burger King and Canadian donut chain Tim Hortons this week. Tim Hortons shareholders vote tomorrow on the deal. The Canadian government approved the $11 billion merger last week. BK agreed to a number of conditions, including the controversial moving of its headquarters from Florida to Canada. Warren Buffett is financing the inversion transaction. Shares of Burger King are up more than 60% this year and traded last at $34.81.
Milk prices hit a record all-time high back in September, but now American dairy farmers are feeling the squeeze as prices have gone from $25 to $16 per 100 pounds. Trader Brian Rice of Rice Dairy with the utterly unbelievable story. And Brian, that's a swift price swing. What's behind the move?
Angie, supply has overwhelmed demand in the second half of this year. World stocks are growing fast. Demand has cooled off a little bit. The Russian embargo put a huge dent in the price as well.
Why is that?
Russia imported almost $3 billion worth of dairy product from Europe in 2013. They shut that off, so that had to go somewhere. It's getting pushed out into the world market. It's competing with U.S. stuff. It's driving the price lower.
And making it tough on farmers. What about consumers? Will prices be passed down to consumers at a lower level?
They will. That's always slower. That should happen sometime in the next year.
Good to have you here. Thank you for that update, Brian.
Thank you.
Startling allegations are being brought against chicken company Perdue. It follows the release of this video on YouTube by animal rights group Compassion USA. Perdue farmer Craig Watts opened up his farm to be filmed by the group. Chickens have what appear to be genetic mutations and open sores. Watt contends that he follows Perdue's farming requirements. Meanwhile, Perdue tells First Business, "We can assure you that the conditions shown in this farmer's poultry house do not reflect Perdue standards for how our chickens are raised."
The Takata airbag scandal is taking another turn. Honda is expanding its recall for older model cars containing the potentially deadly airbags to 3 million. Nearly 11 million vehicles in the U.S. from 10 automakers have the bad bags. Takata makes them and is still refusing to go along with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's pleas for a nationwide recall. Last week, a Takata executive once again apologized for the 5 deaths and injuries caused by the defective part.
It's a brisk week for IPOs. Insurance holding company James River Group plans to price shares between $21 to $23 on Friday. The stock will trade under symbol JRVR. Aircraft leasing company Avalon could also price between $21 to $23. That ticker is AVOL. Metaldyne could land between $18 to $21 a share. The company makes engineering parts and plans to trade under ticker MPG. And software maker New Relic plans to IPO Friday. The company is issuing shares between $18 to $20 under symbol NEWR.
Turning to the earnings calendar for today, it's Diamond Foods, H&R Block, and Vail Resorts. Still to come, hiring blitz, what the latest jobs numbers really mean for America. Plus, lock up the tech heads who are going behind bars. And Apple Sauce. Find out why the company that supplies parts for iPhones is outperforming Big Apple.
Prison sentences will be handed down this week for 5 former Bernie Madoff employees. The 5 were convicted in March on charges connected to the massive Ponzi scheme. It's estimated $20 billion was stolen from thousands of investors, including celebrities and charities. Sentencing starts today, almost 6 years since Bernie Madoff surrendered and admitted to the scam. Madoff is serving 150 years behind bars.
In California, inmates are taking coding classes. A nonprofit group known as The Last Mile launched the tech programming course at San Quentin State Prison. Inmates learn software and development skills. The Last Mile also assists grads of the classes with finding programming jobs once they get out.
A critical day in court for Apple today. A judge will review if Apple's iPod lawsuit can move forward. Plaintiffs in a class action lawsuit claim Apple blocked iPod users to access music from competitors. Friday, Apple's lawyers uncovered that 2 lead plaintiffs in the case did not purchase iPods during the time period that is the basis for the case. One plaintiff has even dropped out of the lawsuit. Also on Friday, Apple's former CEO, the late Steve Jobs, appeared in court in a never-before-released testimony that was videotaped in 2011. Jobs contended Apple was protecting music from being pirated by hackers.
Apple claimed the top spot as the corporation with the biggest market cap this year, but Rick Munera of Motley Fool is here with companies that are outpacing Apple in terms of revenue growth. Good to have you here.
Thank you, Angie. Thank you.
Well, you came with 5 stocks today, starting with Skyworks Solutions, which ironically supplies to Apple. How great are those revenues coming in?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking next year. I mean, the company's doing great. They just increased their dividend, and next year they're growing 29%. There's a lot of companies like Skyworks and Avago and InvenSense that are providing the stuff that go into the iPhones and the iPads and make them interesting growth stocks.
You also say GoPro will come in with 24% revenue growth. What's coming down the line for that company?
Yeah, GoPro was one of this year's hottest IPOs, and they're the companies you see all over the place with those wearable cameras, and it started off as just extreme sports, but now everybody's wearing these GoPro, these high-def cameras that they take everywhere, and the company's trying to become a media company with a lot of uploads and internet and a lot of traction.
And we all know that people are watching more television and movies online, so Netflix, another big grower.
Yeah, that one surprised me because the stock took a big hit back in October when the company said it only added 3 million subscribers in its most recent quarter. But the company's still expected to grow 23% rate next year. So it's still growing very quickly and a lot faster than Apple, which is expected to grow 15% the next year.
Amazon shares have been hit very hard, and yet it's on your list.
Yeah, Amazon has never had a sales growth problem. Their problem is mostly about margins lately. They're investing in a lot of things. They've had some duds like the Fire Phone and stuff like that. But the company itself, sales continue to grow, and it should have a very strong holiday season, and it's expected to grow 18% in 2015.
And last but not least on your list, Google. Big growth there as well.
Yeah, Google is probably Apple's biggest enemy right now. They're both fighting for the mobile market, which is really what everything is right now, smartphones and tablets. It's either an Android or an Apple iOS product. But Google is growing at 18%. It still owns the market in online advertising. It's growing very quickly.
Rick, thanks for joining us this morning from the Motley Fool. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Coming up, why some companies are putting the kibosh on the office Christmas party. And did the job market just cross a key threshold? One economist says yes, it did. Office holiday parties are crashing. Executive search firm Battaglia Winston says fewer companies are throwing a holiday bash this year. The survey shows 88% of U.S. companies plan to celebrate. That is down 8% from last year. The research finds some companies are still in a recession mentality. More people working from home and employees' hectic schedules were also given as reasons for canceling the fun. Bill Mahler joins me now with cheerful news about the economy. Bill.
Boom! The government's employment number, it's still resounding 3 days after it came out. Here's the data. 321,000 jobs were added to American payrolls in November, way more than was expected, and the rate of unemployment holds at 5.8%. Every month, we parse the data with Brent Schutte, senior investment strategist at BMO Asset Management. And that number was only one of the data points that was looking good, looking positive.
It's hard to take my thoughts down to one particular sentence or two because, in general, this whole report was great, and it's not surprising. I was actually surprised that last month was a disappointing 214. We talked about being revised, and it did. We also haven't mentioned before, and I don't want to cloud the issue too much, but all economic data in the U.S. is seasonally adjusted. They attempt to remove distortions such as people getting hired for Christmas or fired after Christmas. Last month, actual number without seasonal adjustments was 1,064,000 people were actually hired. That was the 20th highest report ever, but they adjusted it down by the fourth largest amount ever.
So in sum, you're saying things are better than they look.
Things are better than they look, and we continue to believe that they will continue to be better.
How about a wage? We are starting to see some acceleration there too, finally.
Right, finally is a good way to put that, and I think next year, if 2014 was about job growth accelerating like we mentioned would happen last year, 2015 will be about wages. And we think they're going to continue to move higher. Basically, labor slack is coming out. The jobs market is tighter, and what that means is that you are able to go out and try to tell your boss that you need a raise.
So all those people who disengage from looking for jobs, they're now going to start trickling back in?
They are trickling back in, and that's probably kept a little bit of a cap on the wages that you can extract because more people are coming back and saying, you know, I'd like to have my...
That's why it's still 5.8%, I'm assuming.
Right. The labor force actually grew a little bit, and it has grown over the past 12 months, which is important for future U.S. economic growth. It's a good thing. But we do think in 2015 wages will grow, and that's another good thing.
So you made a prediction about a year ago about the economy improving and that job growth would be improving, and certainly you were right on that.
I ended up being right. After the first quarter with the polar vortex, it ended up being a little tenuous, but all in all, I think right now we're running at about 228,000 in jobs added. On an average basis, and there's no reason to believe that next year...
On an average monthly basis.
Average monthly
and
basis.
that's like 10 months in a row it's been over 200,000.
Right. It's been incredibly strong and incredibly consistent. There's no reason to believe, based upon the economic outlook, that that won't continue next year. Most of our forward economic indicators continue to suggest that GDP will be above 3% and possibly, like it has been recently, a couple times above 4%.
Brent Schutte from BMO Asset Management. It's always good to have you on. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Still ahead, why traders will be all over Lululemon stock this week. Tech Talk is next. As earnings news winds down, James O'Malley of Option Hacker joins us now for Chart Talk. Good morning, James.
Good morning.
Lululemon is about the only trader favorite coming up this week that has earnings. Are you playing that stock at all?
Right, I am. I'm looking to get long Lululemon. Now, they have a pretty mixed earnings history, but we're seeing the stock recover well from the October lows, and I think that this is setting up relatively well for a long here. Since there's not a whole lot else going on earnings-wise, I think there's going to be a lot of focus on it, and even though they're implying around a 10% move by Friday's close, since there's going to be so much focus, I think it could move every bit of that. So I'll be looking to get long Lulu with an upside target around 10% higher, but I need to wait to see where it trades into the close today to get a good idea of what strikes I'm going to use.
What's your strategy on some of the oil names?
Right, so I'm still short oil names. I continue to get short oil names every opportunity I get, and one that I've really been focusing on is Transocean, RIG. Now, this is one that we've seen a lot of bearish, unusual options activity in going into the end of the year here, and what's really interesting is that after we got through the OPEC news and oil really took a leg lower, we didn't see traders cover those short positions, but roll them down even further and saw that institutional money getting even shorter and looking for even more aggressive downside targets in names like RIG. So I'm following that order flow, following that institutional money, and looking for more downside in those names.
Now that the jobs number is out, James, what kind of a week are you anticipating trading-wise? Will we see volume, no volume? What do you think?
I think volumes are going to tend to be a little bit thin throughout the rest of the calendar year here. We've had the big data point for this month, which was jobs. It came in really good and didn't really manage to move the market that much. We had news from the ECB last week that they're going to kind of kick the can down the road in terms of deciding what they're going to do policy-wise until next year. So that was one big data point that we were looking for that we're not going to get. So as we don't have much else left to report earnings, we are through all of the data. I really see very slow choppy price action throughout the end of the year, especially as we get closer into the holidays and traders start to go on vacation.
Are you more bullish or bearish going into the end of the year?
I am still rather bullish going into the end of the year. That low oil, cheap energy, cheap gas is going to be good for the consumer. And in the end of the year, in the holidays, the stocks that really come into focus are retail names. So all of that cheap energy is a good thing for consumers in the United States. It puts extra money in their pockets. And we're literally talking about billions of dollars in extra cash they're going to have on hand this holiday season. Should be good for retail stocks, should be good for the market.
Oh, yes, it should. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
It's time for us to steer our way out of here for today. Coming up tomorrow, a sneak peek of the top-rated cars of 2015. Get into the driver's seat with First Business on Tuesday. And from all of us, have a great start to your week.